It's an easy task, 10 minutes maybe less. You open the tab. You're about to start it right now. Instead, you check one notification, then another, then you remember the laundry needs moving to the dryer. 20 minutes disappear. The task is still sitting there untouched. You know exactly what needs to happen. You just can't make yourself start. It's not that you forgot. It's not that you don't care. Somehow, doing almost anything else feels easier than doing the one thing. Answering 3 other messages feels easier. Reorganizing a drawer feels easier. You'll definitely start after this next video, or after lunch, or tomorrow. You've told yourself that exact sentence before, more than once. The deadline gets closer. The feeling doesn't go away, it just gets sharper. By the time you actually start, there's barely enough time left to do it badly. Nothing about this task is actually dangerous. There's no threat here, no risk, nothing to run from. So why does starting it feel this hard? Calendars are new. Deadlines are newer, to-do lists newer still. Productivity apps are newer than all of them combined. But this exact feeling, knowing what to do and stalling anyway, is not new at all. It's not a productivity problem invented by modern work. It's not even a discipline problem, whatever self-help books tend to say. It goes back further than offices, further than clocks, further than writing. And it starts somewhere that never had a single deadline: daily survival. For most of human history, people lived by what anthropologists call an immediate return economy. You gathered food today, you ate it today. Nothing was banked for later. No harvest to plan for, no future season to prepare. Anthropologist James Woodburn studied societies built exactly this way and gave the pattern its name. Immediate return systems, he called them. Almost no storage, almost no long-term planning at all. Anthropologist Marshall Solins studied societies still living this way. He called it, only half joking, the original affluent society. Not because they had more, because they needed almost nothing from tomorrow. Compare that to a farmer planting a seed that won't feed anyone for months. Delayed return systems, Woodburn called those, and they demand a completely different mind. A mind that can sit with an unfinished task and trust it will pay off eventually. No long-term task ever sat there, waiting, judging you for not starting it. The mind that evolved in that world never had to practice waiting. That practice is recent. Maybe 10,000 years old, depending where you look. Against 200,000 years of Homo sapiens, 10,000 barely registers. The muscle for delaying a reward is still new. It was never going to be strong yet. Centuries later, in the deserts of Egypt, a group of monks found the opposite problem. Alone in a small cell with only one task: pray and keep praying. In the 4th century, a monk named Evagrius Ponticus gave that specific dread a name. He called it acedia, the noonday demon. Evagrius wrote about 8 core thoughts that could derail a monk's mind. Acedia, he said, was the harshest of all of them, a heaviness that hit hardest around midday, making the cell feel unbearable. The walls seemed to close in. The hours seemed to stop moving. Suddenly checking on a neighboring monk seemed urgent. Suddenly a nap seemed necessary. Suddenly the cell itself seemed like the wrong place to be at all. Anything but the one task in front of him. Evagrius wasn't describing laziness. He was describing a mind looking for any exit from discomfort. A monk named John Cassian carried these ideas out of the desert into Europe. In the early 5th century, he translated Evagrius's 8 thoughts into Latin for Western monks. Acedia traveled with him, out of one man's cell into an entire tradition. It stopped being one monk's private struggle. It became something an entire religious system had to reckon with. And soon, it would get folded into something even bigger. Centuries after that, the church folded acedia into something bigger. In the 6th century, Pope Gregory the Great took Evagrius's 8 thoughts and condensed them. 8 became 7. A shorter, sharper list, easier to preach from a pulpit. One of the 7 deadly sins, sloth. Acedia's exact word got folded into it, but its meaning survived almost intact. Not simple idleness, a refusal to do the good you knew you should do. Theologians debated it for centuries. Was it sadness, laziness, or something else entirely? Most agreed on one thing. It wasn't about how much you did. It was about the gap between what you knew you should do and what you actually did. It wasn't punished as a crime. It was treated as a spiritual injury, a failure of will. The exact same avoidance, the exact same task sitting there untouched. Only now it had a confessor waiting to hear about it. Just a new name and a much higher price for it. A price paid in guilt, not just in lost time. Centuries later again, something changed the size of the problem completely. The clock. Historian E.P. Thompson studied how pre-industrial life ran on tasks, not time. You worked until the harvest was in, not until a bell told you to stop. A day's work was measured by what got done, not by how many hours it took. There was no single moment when procrastinating cost you a wage. Factories replaced that with fixed hours, and a hard deadline built into every single day. A bell now marked the start of the shift. Another marked the end. Show up late, and some factories simply docked your pay for it minute by minute. Pocket watches spread through the working class for the first time in history. For the first time, delay wasn't just uncomfortable. It could cost you your wages. The task hadn't changed. The stakes around avoiding it had. The pressure got sharper. The urge to avoid it never went anywhere. You can fine a person for being late. You can't fine away the urge to stall. The clock just gave that old urge a new, much sharper edge. So why can't people just push through it, even now, even knowing the cost? In the 1960s, psychologist Walter Mischel ran a famous experiment at Stanford. He offered children one marshmallow now, or two marshmallows if they could just wait. Some waited, many couldn't. The pull of the one in front of them was too strong. It wasn't really about marshmallows. It was about exactly this, near reward against far reward. Economist George Ainsley studied how humans value rewards and found something strange. We don't discount the future evenly. The math isn't a straight line. It curves sharply right near the present moment. A reward 10 minutes away can feel more real than a deadline 10 days away, even when the deadline matters far more. Ainsley called this hyperbolic discounting. Most people just call it give in now, regret it later. Psychologist Fuskia Sirwa spent years studying procrastination directly. Working alongside researcher Timothy Pitchell, she kept finding the same pattern and found it wasn't a time management failure at all. It was mood regulation. People weren't avoiding the task. They were avoiding the bad feeling the task produced. Popular science writers describe it as two systems pulling in opposite directions. A limbic system, chasing whatever feels good right now, and a prefrontal cortex, trying, often failing, to hold out for what matters later. Checking a notification instead of starting work isn't laziness. It's a trade, discomfort now swapped for relief now. The relief is real. It's just borrowed. And the bill always comes back due later, usually bigger. Sirwa found something else, too. Procrastinators weren't happier for having avoided the task. They just delayed the discomfort. They didn't remove it. The task waited, and it kept collecting interest. Modern life didn't invent that trade, but it built an entire industry around making the swap irresistible. In the mid-20th century, psychologist B.F. Skinner studied what makes a reward addictive. Not a reward every time. A reward sometimes, unpredictably. That's what hooked his pigeons hardest. Variable reinforcement, he called it. Modern apps didn't have to invent it. They just borrowed it. A notification takes less than a second to check. A hard task can take an hour just to start. One of them might have something exciting behind it. The other definitely takes effort. Every app on your phone is competing directly with your own to-do list, and it's engineered to win. To-do apps try to compete back, with streaks and reminders and little red badges, but they're still built on the same old bias. Something now beats something later. None of it is an accident. The reward is instant. The task's reward is not. Even open browser tabs count. A dozen small unfinished things, always one click away, each one offering a tiny hit of progress that isn't the progress you actually need. So the brain, running on very old rules, takes the instant one almost every time. It was never built to compete with an industry designed around exactly its weak spot. And it doesn't wait for adulthood to show up. At 8 years old, its homework sitting in the backpack, untouched, while cartoons play in the next room. A parent's voice calling from downstairs. The same 5 extra minutes promised over and over. At 16, it's a paper due tomorrow, and a full night spent doing anything except writing it. The room gets cleaned. The playlist gets rebuilt, anything except the first sentence. At 30, it's a work email, still unread, 3 days after it needed a reply. At 45, it's a doctor's appointment that's been about to get booked for months. At 70, it's the paperwork on the kitchen table, the phone call that still hasn't been made. Different tasks, different tools to avoid them with, same exact hesitation. Different tasks, different decades of a life, same exact ancient trade. It never once needed to be taught. It just needed a task and a nearer alternative. So back to that 10-minute task, still sitting there untouched. Back to the tab you opened and didn't start. Back to one more notification, checked instead. None of that was ever really about laziness. It was your mind doing exactly what it's always done. Reaching for relief that's close, over a reward that's far. An immediate return mind, dropped into a delayed return world it never fully adapted to. A monk in the desert felt it as a demon at noon. A scholar in Latin gave it a name that crossed a continent. A medieval town called it a sin, and gave it a name people still use today. A factory clock turned it into a wage you could lose. A psychologist in a lab offered it 2 marshmallows, and watched the same old pull play out. An economist drew it as a curve. A researcher called it mood, not laziness. Now it's just a notification. and a task that can wait 5 more minutes. Same trade every time. Same short, quiet relief. You didn't inherit laziness. You inherited a mind built to chase the nearest reward. In a world that never had far-off deadlines to weigh against it. It just never got the memo that the deadlines are real now. It's not broken. It's just old software doing exactly what it was built to do. Built for berries today, not invoices next Tuesday. So next time you catch yourself reaching for anything, except the one task in front of you, notice the trade for what it actually is. Not proof that something is wrong with you. Proof that underneath a blinking cursor, you're still running very old software. Software built for a world with no deadlines. Still bartering for 5 more minutes of relief. That trade isn't a character flaw. It's a few 100,000 years of habit. The task in front of you right now doesn't know any of that history. It's just waiting, the way it's always waited, for a mind to notice the trade and choose the task anyway just this once. Not forever, not perfectly, just once right now. That's the only version of starting that ever actually works. Not motivation arriving first. Just the next 10 minutes started anyway. You're not lazy. You're not broken. And you're not behind some invisible curve everyone else cleared easily. You're carrying the exact same old software every human before you carried. You're not the first human to feel this way.